Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, depending where in the world you are. I'm thrilled to have you join me for today's live event on human-centric leadership for high performance. We have an incredible group joining us today. Experienced CEOs, C-level executives, and HR directors from different industries and countries. My name is Lizzie Claesson, and for the past 25 years, I've had the privilege of working with exceptional leaders like you, helping them transform their teams and achieve new levels of success. I work with a team of amazing individuals at Brighter Leaders. To learn more about our work, you can visit brighterleaders.com. I won't take more than 10-12 minutes, shorter than a coffee break, but far more valuable. My suggestion is that you close all other browsers and notifications and immerse in this interactive session. Imagine this. You walk into a meeting and the room is tense, the team is disengaged, hesitant to speak. Deadlines are met, just barely but met. You feel like you're pulling people rather than leading them. Now picture this instead. You step into the same room, but now people are energized. They share ideas openly, they challenge each other, they care about results, not because they have to, but because they want to. What has changed? The difference between these two teams is not intelligence, resources, or talents. It's leadership. And more specifically, it's human-centric leadership, which is the ability to lead with the heart, blending empathy and business acumen in what unlocks high performance. Drop in the comments, have you ever worked with a leader who inspired you? What did they do differently? Elma from our Brighter Leaders team will be reading and commenting your inputs. I'll read responses later and comment as well. A few years ago, I worked with a leader named Anna. She was brilliant, strategic, and results-driven. She was facing a big challenge. Her team was disengaged. People did the work, but they weren't invested. Turnover was higher than the average for the industry, and performance was flatlining. Anna's instinct was to push harder, measure more KPIs, but it didn't work. She thought she needed to drive more accountability. Instead, what she needed was more connection. As we started working together, she started making small changes, listening more, asking better questions, recognizing contributions. Asking better questions is something I've noticed some leaders tend to forget. They ask more questions, but not better ones. The distinction between asking more questions and asking better questions is critical in leadership. Many leaders recognize the importance of curiosity and engagement, so they start asking more questions. But quantity doesn't always equal quality. Sometimes leaders fall into these traps when they've been more inquisitive. They ask many surface level questions but don't allow space for deeper reflection. Kindly write yes in the chat if you recognize any of these questions. Let's start with the overwhelming and reactive type. What do you think about this? Okay, and what about that? Do you see any risks? What's the next step? Instead of many questions, a soul and better question would be, if we were to fast forward 6 months, what would success look like for you? Would you agree? This question is future-oriented and thought-provoking. Let me know in the chat. Another trap is leading questions. Instead of being truly open-ended, they subtly guide the response. For instance, don't you think this approach is the best one, which contains a bias and is a confirmation seeking? A better question would be one that encourages independent thinking, like, what approach do you believe will have the highest impact and why? Now, let's move to the check the box questions. Asking just for the sake of engagement, but not genuinely listening. Are we moving forward? Such questions invite to a simple yes or no. Let me turn this question into one that encourages honesty and problem solving. What part of this feels most challenging and what would make it easier? Let me know in the chat if you're noticing the difference between these questions. How can we ask better questions? To start with, shift from what to why and how. Instead of what's the update, try why do you think this approach will work best? Secondly, replace closed questions with open-ended ones. Instead of do you agree, try what's your perspective on this? Thirdly, create psychologically safety. Instead of is there anything wrong, try What could we do to improve this? And lastly, your silence. Effectively ask a question and pause for a response. Silence signals that their thoughts matter. Leaders who ask fewer but more powerful questions create deeper conversations, stronger engagement, and better decisions. It's not about how many questions you ask, it's about asking the right ones that provoke insight, spark curiosity, and build trust. Maybe you're wondering how it went for Anna. Well, she started asking better questions. This is what happened. Turnover dropped by 40%. Engagement improved notoriously, and performance, you may wonder. The team went from barely meeting their targets to exceeding them by 20% in 6 months. That a human-centric leadership gives good results is also backed by science. Time magazine reports that impactful leaders evolve by developing curiosity, emotional intelligence, and self-reflection. Korn Ferry found that leaders who practice empathy are 3 times more effective at inspiring performance. And Gallup data shows that teams with high psychological safety outperform others by up to 40%. The most successful leaders don't just manage people, they connect with them. This is why I'm going to share 3 practical tools you can start using immediately to lead with the heart while driving high performance. If you're excited about this, write yes in the chat, please. These tools are developed to create a culture where people feel seen, valued, and motivated. Number 1, the 2-minute curiosity rule. Let me know in the chat if you've heard about it. This is what it is about. Before jumping into problem solving or giving direction, take 2 extra minutes to get curious. Instead of telling, start asking. What's your perspective? What's challenging you the most right now? What's one thing I can do to support you better? Why would you say it works? It works because it builds psychological safety, which Google found to be the #1 factor in high-performing teams. When people feel heard, engagement skyrockets, and so does performance. Allow me to give you a challenge. In your next meeting, instead of jumping straight to solutions, start with questions. I'd love to know how it goes for you. I'd really appreciate if you share later here on this chat or you DM me to share your experience. The second tool, the vulnerability loop exercise. Who has heard of this tool? We know that great leaders don't have all the answers and admitting that increases trust. Try this. Share a challenge you face in a team meeting. Ask, how would you approach this? And then implement an idea from the team and acknowledge their contribution. Why this works? According to Harvard research, leaders who show vulnerability first create stronger team trust. When you show that you're a human, people step up more confidently. I'd like to share a personal story with you. I once worked with a CEO who struggled with delegation. He felt he had to have the answers all the time. The moment he started openly asking his team for input, something changed. They didn't just give ideas, they took ownership. Within months, engagement and results improved dramatically. Please drop in the chat. When was the last time you showed yourself vulnerable as a leader? How did your team respond? The third and last tool I will be sharing with you today is the 3-to-1 recognition formula. I'm sure many of you have heard of it and use it. This tool is about balancing motivation and accountability, and it can be used in this simple feedback structure. Give 3 positive reinforcements. I appreciate how you, then give 1 constructive feedback point. One area we can grow is, for example, instead of saying, you need to speak up more in meetings, try, I really appreciate your insights when we talk on one-on-ones. Your perspective is valuable. I'd love to hear more about you in meetings. Your ideas could impact the whole team. Why this works? According to Gallup, employees are 12 times more engaged when they receive balanced, strength-based feedback rather than just corrections. Here comes a little homework for you. Think of someone in your team. Go ahead, think of someone in your team. Ready? What's one thing you could recognize them for today? Leading with heart isn't soft leadership, it's smart leadership. It's how you create a culture where people want to perform at their best, not because they have to, but because they're inspired to. Here's my challenge for you. Pick one of these tools and use it this week. Will you try the 2-minute curiosity rule? Will you practice the vulnerability loop, or will you choose the 3-to-1 recognition formula? Write in the comments 1, 2, or 3 to share which one you'll start with. I'll be reading through and replying after this live. If this resonated with you, let's continue the conversation. Feel free to follow my work here on LinkedIn. I post insights like this weekly. If you found this helpful, kindly like the post, share your reflections in the comments, and share this link with your network. Before we finish, let me leave you one final thought. The best leaders don't just drive performance, they create a space where people feel safe, inspired, and motivated. And that's where true high performance happens. Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next time.